Hello, welcome to the Mermaid Tavern. Cheers. Skål. Slonjava. Mm. Ah. So the 8th of December. Uh, not particularly an anniversary. I or anyone else who loves the Beatles or John Lennon looks to keep, but I thought um, I'd reflect on it. Just a short reflection on it, just because it had a big effect on me. I'm sure it had a big effect on you if you were there at that time. I was just looking through some of the music papers I kept. This is the Melody Maker, the man who gave Peace a Chance, 8-page tribute to John Lennon, dated the 13th of December, 1980. And remember Record Mirror? To get Record Mirror. Yeah. Still got a few others, but those are the only two I can find. And there's quite a few uh, cuttings and things here. Yeah, the 8th of December, but by a sort of cruel twist of fate, it was actually the 9th of December here in England because of the 5 hour time difference from New York. And by that I mean, of course, the fact that number nine had featured quite strongly in John's life. So that was yeah. I was working in a record shop at the time in Manchester. I was 16 years of age. I'd just been working in that record shop since September. I'd left school at 16, the summer, um, and my dad was sad I wasn't going to stay on, and I wasn't really university material, and tried to get me to art school. Initially I wanted to go to art school. You know why? Because of John having been there. But yeah, I didn't really want it. I found it wasn't for me. I don't know what was for me. And anyway, so they had these government schemes at that time, where you pay £23.50 a week, and it was like free labour for some of these employers. Really, without wishing to get political, it was just to sort of reduce the unemployment figures, which were quite substantial in England, of course, back in the 80s, at least 3 million unemployed, if not more. Um, yeah, anyway, I wasn't complaining. It was a record shop. I love records. I'd always loved records. I got into the Beatles, particularly. My sister had the Red and Blue albums. I've heard a lot of people say that same story, that of my age, that their way into it was the Red and Blue album, and my sister had them. And it wasn't really until I started really liking lots of Beatles songs, particularly from the Red album, sort of, I don't know, mid 70s. But I can remember really buying, I think I went out and bought Sergeant Pepper from the HMV in Manchester about 1978. That was my first Beatles record I remember buying, Sergeant Pepper. Anyway, yeah, so I was working in a record shop called Rare Records in Manchester, funny enough, which, if you're from Manchester, you might, of my age, or older, you might remember. It was quite a famous record store in the 1970s. Ian Curtis, Ian Curtis from Joy Division had worked in the shop about 5 years before, about 75. And in fact, many of the staff there, like there's a lady called Maggie and Malcolm, they remembered Ian. Yeah. Also, Johnny Marr. I read a thing about him. He said that he described it as being a sort of Aladdin's cave for records. They had the singles apartment in the basement. That had gone by the time I got there. It was really rare records because of imports. They used to bloody soundtrack and middle of the road stuff. So it wasn't really rare records as record collectors might consider it. If anybody was coming in, wanting the Damned, New Rose, whatever, one of these really rare records or something on, Sex Pistols on EMI, they would have been disappointed because it wasn't that rare. Anyway, me and this other lad were £23.50 a week. We were just a bit like dog's bodies for a bit, and the other lad got fed up actually and left. He'd left before, I think the end of November. But they were opening the store, were opening a new. They were moving out of the city suburbs to Wimslow, and they'd opened a new store there in about November. After the first couple of months of me working in the main store, and they were going to keep the old store on until the following year, and it was going to close, coinciding, funny enough, with when I was going to leave. It was only 6 months scheme, and of course, no prospect of employment at the end of it. So it became a bit more fun because the managers had disappeared to the new place. So just me with them and Malcolm and Maggie. I remember those two particularly. Anyway, so yeah, I was allowed to do some ordering, and of course, I was ordering Beatles things in, wasn't I? And John Lennon. I just discovered like John Lennon's solo albums and George Harrison's solo albums, etc. The year or two before, 78, 79. So it was all new to me. So I was ordering these in, particularly Lennon stuff. And unfortunately, the new store seemed to have power of veto over my orders, which was a bit ridiculous. So half of it didn't turn up. But of course, the exciting news was John Lennon was recording a new album, and that was ever so exciting, wasn't it? I mean, in a way, because I'd only just got into Lennon, in the year or two before, listening to his solo albums. I didn't have as long a wait as most people would have had to wait, because his last album, as you know, of new material was Walls and Bridges in 1974. Of course, he'd done the rock and roll album come out in 75, which had been recorded earlier, and then this compilation album, Shaved Fish, which is great in it, that album. I like that. So I didn't have as long a wait, if you're like me and we didn't have as long a wait, did we? But I remember that preceding summer, there were stories, or maybe earlier in the year, 1980. That was also the year Peter Sellers died as well, which was one of my kind of heroes. Anyway, yeah, there was earlier in the year a story about John Lennon, picture of him with a long beard, very gaunt faced, like he was like a sort of recluse. I remember John said in an interview, didn't he, that the press were trying to portray him as this sort of Howard Hughes type, long fingernails and things, but when he wasn't. But there was this long beard, and the story, you believe the press, and it seemed like he'd never record again. But of course, suddenly there was that excitement that he was going to record an album, and sure enough, yeah, Just Like Starting Over came out. This is my copy I bought. Actually, ordered quite a few copies in. Well, it had been ordered actually before I was doing the ordering. There weren't that many copies actually. I think I was. I don't know. I think I didn't order that many. It didn't really fly off the shelves in the shop I was in anyway. I remember that. I bought 2 copies of it back in the day too, because they did used to buy 2 copies of things. If you're a record collector, it sounds ridiculous now, doesn't it? One to play, one to keep. I've since given away or sold the other copy I had of this. So that was exciting. It was a real rock and roll song, wasn't it? Just like Starting Over. It's been too long since we got behind. Oh, I won't attempt to sing it, but it was great. This came out towards the end of October. It was so exciting to have a John Lennon single. I remember actually, Beatles ballads had come out as well. That was the first. I know it was a compilation album, but it was the first Beatles album that I bought when it came out, so to speak. It had that great cover, didn't it? Which is that great picture done by Patrick John Byrne, the Scottish painter. I love John Byrne. A few of his pictures around. He was great. A lot of people mistakenly think that album cover was done for the White Album, which it wasn't. It was done for the Beatles illustrated lyrics. That picture, very sort of. I love that picture. I always loved it. But yeah, the Beatles ballads that came out was exciting. I remember. So it was like, and then John Lennon that came up before, Just Like Starting Over, and then of course the main album, Double Fantasy, came out, and it was just so exciting, so exciting to have a John Lennon album. You know, these great songs like Woman. I love Woman, don't you? It's one of my favourite John Lennon songs, but they're all good. A lot of people criticise Yoko's songs on here, but I think they're quite good actually. Yeah, I love the album. That was in November, about the middle of November that came out, and yeah. So we get to the 9th of December. It was a Tuesday morning. I remember my dad dropped me at the station. I think I used to get a train into to Manchester and walk down Oxford Road towards through St Peter's Square, Albert Square. You know, if you know Manchester, you know what I'm talking about. John Dalton Street. That's where it was. Um, where there's been a succession of Italian restaurants ever since it closed in 1981. Anyway, so I was in there, and I remember I'll never forget it. Early, about 10 in the morning or something. I've been open more than about half an hour. This manager, he was the son of the main man. The main man there. I won't give his name out. I'm not like that. He's probably long gone as well. But it reminded me a bit of Barry Took. Remember Barry Took? If you know him, my age, you remember BBC. He was always doing like Points of View or something like that. Big head of white hair and glasses. The manager reminded me of him, but his son, I can see him. He was a balding guy, and let's be honest, well, he was a bit of a knob, they say. And even more so, he rang me this morning, that morning, the Tuesday, the 9th of December, and he knew I liked the Beatles, he knew I liked Lennon. And he said, Lennon's been shot, ha ha ha. And I thought, yeah, 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 yeah. You know, do you know what? By then, I think I probably didn't care whether, initially, the first few months there was like sort of watching my P's and Q's, but by then, just like the latter years of school, I was more rebellious, and I didn't really care what I said to them. I didn't say, you know, F off, but I said, yeah, yeah, you something stupid, whatever I said, I can't remember now. But I didn't really care if they were going to kick me out, really. Um, anyway, he was a knob, winding me up, and anyway, put the phone down, and then people started coming into the shop, and you know what? If I remember, I might be wrong on this. It was somebody wanted Imagine. And I thought, why do you want Imagine? And then they said, and I heard through them that what had happened. It all filtered through. I was like in shock. Were you? Like a bombshell, you know? Funny enough, some of the stock I'd ordered, but you know, month or so before Beatles stuff was around, so it was flying off the shelves, uh, and you know, I bet they were sorry they'd cancelled some of the orders of stuff because people couldn't get enough of it. Can you remember? People could not get enough of it. Particularly Imagine. You know, Imagine only came out in England as a single in 1975, which I always find a bit strange. Other parts of the world, not so, but I think it was still available, so you could order it in. And of course, everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted Imagine. And I said elsewhere that I've never been able to listen to Imagine in the same way again. It's still a lovely song, don't get me wrong, but particularly because I was working in a record shop, I was right at the grassroots level of people buying, and they were people couldn't get enough of it, and yeah, I was in shock. Really, you know what? I don't think I hadn't really lost anybody. I was yet to lose any close people to me. So you know, John, a stranger really, just somebody I loved in music. Uh, it was like the first devastating loss that I'd experienced. I remember I didn't want to go into work for a few days. I remember my dad saying to me in the end, "Come on, life goes on," and all that sort of stuff. And bless my dad, I was to lose him a couple of years later. Um, but you know, Roxy Music had that hit with "Jealous Guy," but for John, it's on the front. That was flying off the shelves quicker than any came out, didn't it? Was it early '81? It was just you couldn't get enough of it. I didn't really like it. I mean, I liked Roxy Music, and I remember buying "Street Life" by Roxy Music, one of the very first singles I ever bought in 1972. I thought it was really cool. But Brian Ferry sort of "Me in touch." It was laborious a bit, and I didn't like it. Still don't like it. But oh yeah, people couldn't get enough of that. It was like number one, wasn't it? And I think Imagine was number one too. But yeah, it just anyway. I it's like you didn't know what to do. I remember be looking through these cuttings of the time, uh, newspaper cuttings. I've got the Daily Star, the Daily Star. Used to get the Daily Star, didn't we? I remember looking around to our school with I'm a Stargazer badges. How us boys used to like the Daily Star back in the day. Anyway, was it like 25,000? I think it was 20,000 or something. Um, yeah, 20,000 fans. There's a picture here, and I'll put a little thing in here where you can actually, I've actually found myself here. He looks really happy, the guy, doesn't he? Singing to all these people in front of St George's Hall on the steps. Every time I go to Liverpool, I see St George. I come out of Lime Street, see St George's Hall. I always think of that. Isn't it funny? And this was the thing of the day. Curly Music. They must have been. They must have been a music store in Liverpool. And yeah, it was Sunday the 14th of December, 1980. Yeah, they were on Stanley Street. This shop called Curly Music, Liverpool's leading music store. They were giving these free sheets out with the lyrics to Imagine, Give Peace a Chance, and Working Class Hero. So they were giving. Got a few of those actually. Kept a few of those. Imagine they're worth anything. Um, but yeah, so that was it really. Yeah, John. Um, just thought I'd share that with you. I'd say it's not an anniversary that I particularly like to keep, but it had a big effect on me, and I know it had a big effect on you if you loved John, if you were there at the time. Let me know if it did. Let me know your remembrances. It'd be interesting to read them on this very day, which obviously in America was 8th of December, but in England was the 9th of December. Thank you for watching. Bless you for your company again. Will I see you again? I hope so.